Good morning, and welcome to the Sunday Coffee Edition. Joining is my co-host, the future governor of Virginia. Got to vote for TK Eppley. We have a special guest today that's going to walk us through on her journey from being a victim to survivor and what I like to call a thriver, Amelia Zachry. I'm your host, Dr. Dan Ford, and this is EchelonOrchid.
Guess who's back?
Morning, Amelia.
Hi.
Thank you for joining.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Governor, how are you this morning?
Good morning, America. I swear to God.
I'm on a mission to get TK elected governor of Virginia.
And I'm on a mission not to be in the public eye in politics. So
because I look at it, and he's threatened that if he becomes governor, he's going to fly to Indiana, he's going to punch me in the mouth, and he's going to go back, to go run the Commonwealth. And I'm like, how great would my stock just go way up that I got someone elected that wasn't even running?
It's not that I wasn't running; it's that I was actively pursuing not being involved.
So I'm going, if I could make this happen, I could get anyone elected. So that's my, it'd be worth a punch in the mouth.
That's all right. Dan is going to be required to give up his job, his other daytime job, and come and be the CTO for the state. We're going to drag it into the 21st century, whether they like it or not.
But yes, true, probably. So Amelia, welcome to the show where TK and I we enjoy some coffee. Are you on a Sunday morning? Are you drinking coffee or tea or what is it that's in your mug?
Or cocktail?
Black coffee.
Black coffee. There you go. Anything special?
No, I think this one's cherry. Michigan cherry.
Michigan cherry.
Oh.
TK, are you representing your local brand?
I am always.
Yep. I have no idea. We're at my dad's this week because my daughter just had her birthday. So I have no idea what kind of coffee this is. I'm just glad it's no longer Folgers because growing up, that's what they always had. And, just like most things for me, I didn't like coffee growing up because it's not like we had good coffee. I didn't drink growing up because my parents didn't have any, good alcohol. So I didn't know what any of this stuff good was until I was well out of the house and was able to go, wow, that's what good coffee tastes like. Oh,
and you were sitting in my office drinking mine in the middle of the afternoon on both occasions.
Yeah. So it's one of those things. So Amelia, you've got a great story that I've been reading quite a bit about it. I really appreciate you coming on. I think it takes a tremendous amount of courage to talk about, the journey that you've been taking. And I don't want to talk so much about the things that, had you be a victim, but, whatever you want to share with that part, and then move to how you changed your mentality from victim to survivor. And then what I like to still believe, I think you're thriving. I think you're doing much more than just surviving, because I don't see you just being comfortable with the status quo. I mean, you're pushing the envelope inside yourself. So I think you're thriving. I think you may have sold yourself a little bit short with just that you're just surviving. But I'll turn it over to you and let you talk.
Thank you. I actually usually tell people that now, after processing with post-trauma processing, I'm now in a place of growth rather than just healing. I was healing for a very long time. So I'll just go back a little bit real quickly. I was raped when I was 19. And so at that age, I was trapped in the stigma of rape culture and the mentality and the culture around the social script around rape that pushed me into a corner and made me be in isolation and suffer in solitude and in silence for so many years. And about 8 years later is when I started receiving treatment. And that's when I met my husband, my now husband. We were dating back then, and he encouraged me to get support and get help, professional help. And that was the first time I heard the word rape even. I had never thought that what had happened was rape. And so that was a turning point where there was an acceptance of a violation. And only then with that acceptance, I could proceed with the healing. for me to be able to understand what had happened and that it wasn't my fault, and that now I am entitled to healing. I'm entitled to a different kind of perspective on life where I should be thriving. I should be living my life and being present in my life. And so through treatment, and now I'm 11 years into treatment. And I feel like now, only very recently, have I truly accepted it, and am able to talk about it, and I'm able to process it outwardly and help and share it with other people. And that came about really because I have two beautiful children. And I think when you have children, there's a reparenting that occurs because we're teaching our children things, right? And then you hear yourself saying these things to the kids, and then I started realizing that I wasn't actually living that. I was telling them stuff about healing, telling them stuff about getting through difficult things and coming out on the other side, but I wasn't really entirely in that place yet. And so I decided to write this book. I decided to write my memoir, and the memoir was describing of my whole journey from the trauma to bipolar disorder, which came about because of the immense trauma I suffered. Bipolar disorder surfaced, and that's something that's in the reality of my children's lives that we have to talk about all the time. And so I decided to write this memoir that has all these stories in there. And I wanted it to be a communicate to people who have been through the same thing that I have, and to my children, and to people who are observers or witnesses or allies or advocates who see these things happening, to be able to step up and make a change to the social script around these things, around mental illness and around rape culture. So that's how I found my strength in healing and my strength in growing and becoming a voice to normalizing mental illness and dismantling rape culture.
So your mental illness, you talk quite a bit about that. Do you think this came about from the trauma that you had?
Yes. So bipolar disorder has a genetic predisposition. So I probably had the genetic predisposition to have bipolar disorder, but having the immense trauma happen to me brought that to surface. Now, there's no guarantees that wouldn't have happened sometime later, at a later point in my life, or a different kind of trauma. But retrospectively, when we investigated the symptoms and the manifestation of the symptoms, it did not show up before the rape. So we believe that it is because of the rape that it has come to surface.
So I'm curious because I go through a lot of I'll say I put myself in frameworks of how to operate, because otherwise I may go completely off the deep end on people, because I go, what are you doing? That's not the way you're supposed to do it. I project onto them, which I'm really projecting my own insecurities onto them. So I have to keep myself in a framework. Did you have to develop, for yourself, and or working with the different professionals you have, in order to try to keep yourself in a framework or a set of rules or anything along those lines to help you get to that point of healing?
So I did a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy and acceptance commitment therapy, where with CBT, I identify cognitive distortions, which is a big factor in the way I was thinking and the way I was processing the world and my participation in the world. And I understood things from a very twisted point of view, a trauma-infused point of view. And so I was able to identify those distortions and then reframe them. And now that's like second nature to me. Whenever I think about anything, I'm thinking in those processes. And acceptance commitment theory, I accept things the way they are. I don't fight the feelings, which are very strong. If you've experienced any kind of trauma, those feelings come in really strong and they take over. And any rational thought is kind of put aside, because the emotional side of things takes over and it's overwhelming. And then I have to use these tools in order for me to be able to have kind of a mindset shift towards something that's healthy and productive, so that I can be a participant in my life the way I would ideally like it to be. And that's kind of why I'm an advocate for treatment, professional treatment, because I think everybody deserves to live a life that you're thriving in, to live a life that you want for yourself, not a life that you're just kind of trudging through and surviving through. And that's why I agree with what you said earlier. I'm not just a survivor, I'm a thriver, because I want that piece of that life that I have imagined for myself. And that's possible if we go through all the right ways of thinking and correcting errors in our way of thinking and mindset shifts, perspective shifts.
Very nice.
Amelia, what do you, I'm a retired SEAL, and so we deal with a lot of PTSD, right? And TBI. There's stress induced, there's blast induced, and there's incident induced trauma, right? And I think one of the biggest barriers to healing and help is not just, in your case, not just the stigma of the assault, right? And how society puts that in a little box so that they don't have to address it and make themselves uncomfortable, right? Because I think that's really a big part of it, is like, hey, if we have to really talk about this and talk about the evil that it is, then we have to do some uncomfortable things, and people don't like doing that. But I think probably one of the second largest things we don't want to talk about, because it's a hard conundrum to deal with from an insurance perspective, from a people-to-people perspective, is mental health, right? And people look at it like, well, what do you mean you have to go talk to somebody? Right? Well, we talk to people all the time. I'm just talking to somebody who's very directed in what I need help with, right? And
yes.
How was that journey to get to the point where, you felt comfortable to go get and seek counsel and seek somebody that wanted to listen and wanted to help and give you the tools to thrive? And how long did that take? And who around you was your support mechanism to get you there, right? Because we don't do anything alone. So how did you, just say, I'm out in the wind by myself? No, somebody had to say it's okay to do that, because mental health is a very hard thing. And I think it's one of the big problems we have in America. And I'll use the example of homelessness. Homelessness largely isn't a homeless problem. It's largely a mental health problem, right? And I think a lot of people, if we say, and there's like Michael Phelps and others are out there trying to advocate for mental health awareness and things like that. But there's, in my mind, two of the hardest things that in life to put into the public eye are assault and mental health problems. And you've like jumped over both of those hurdles and are running down the road now. And it fascinates me. I'm interested to kind of hear that, getting to one to get to the other type of thing.
So there's a lot of things with that, right? PTSD, I suffer from PTSD and bipolar disorder. Those are both mental illness issues, right?
Right.
So I think the first thing is, like, when I say I want to normalize mental illness, I want to be part of conversations that normalize mental illness. First of all, is to create the awareness, the general awareness about what mental illness is, and when do you need to seek help, and what does it look like, and what do you need, what does it look like, when do you seek help, and what does seeking help look like, and those kind of things that you're asking me right now. I wish that more people knew so that they could get help when they needed it. A lot of people are not getting help because they don't even realize or acknowledge that they are going through something that's actually within the realm of mental illness. And so when I was going through it, this is speaking from experience, obviously, because I'm not a professional expert on the matter, but speaking from my experience, I did not want to get treatment. And my husband, well, we were dating then, we were living together, and that's when he was watching me, and he was monitoring my movements and the way I was behaving and my mood swings. And he said, like, this is not normal. There's something unhealthy about this. Like, let's talk to somebody. And so he had the awareness, and he encouraged me to talk to somebody. And that wasn't even pretty, because we went to the first, he found the therapist for me, and I found the therapist. He made me look for a therapist, because he said that one thing you have to do is you need to step into this too. So I said, right. Okay, I looked for a therapist, and we found one, and we were actually living in Japan at the time. So the struggle was even worse, because I had to find an English speaking therapist, and we found an American therapist who was practicing in Japan. And so we found him, and thankfully he was a good one. That when we first therapist that I met, I liked him, but I didn't want to be in treatment. So the first 4 sessions was my husband sitting there talking to the therapist. He was giving the reports and lists, and then it took me a while for me to then accept that, like, okay, like, yeah, what they're saying is true, and I think I need help. And then I eased myself into the therapy. But when we moved, now here comes the trick. When we moved back to America, we had to find a therapist that's practicing here, because he couldn't see me anymore. he's not licensed to practice in America anymore. So I had to find somebody here, and looking for a therapist here became a nightmare because I had to go. I had to go through. I went through like 6 to 8 therapists before I found the one that I liked.
Wow.
That I was in sync with, that I felt like I trusted her and I understood the treatment methods, and they were open to explaining therapy methods to me and discussing. And it was more of a discussion rather than this is what we're going to do.
Right.
And so
it was a
partnership. That's right. It's a partnership rather than rather than coming from a position of power, right? Somebody telling you what to do. But the first few ones, I had many different kind of therapists. I had one that told me that I shouldn't have children because I have bipolar disorder. I had one that tried to prescribe me so many drugs during the first therapy session. And there's not much you can learn about a person from the first session.
Right.
It's getting to know somebody and getting to know someone's psyche, and like it takes some time before somebody understands you before they can get into a treatment plan. So you
have to build a relationship first.
Yes, and also like to build trust in me. So like when I met my therapist, the first thing she did was a medical assessment. She said, you will need to do these blood tests. You will need to do this blood work to rule out any other kind of medical conditions to make sure that that's not what's causing your mood swings. And then we'll do a mental health assessment, and then she did an evaluation, and then we came up with a treatment plan. So for me, that worked for me because I felt I was being understood. I felt like I was being paid attention to, and then I liked her, and I understood I was in charge of my healing. I understood what was going on with my treatment, and that's very important. And I think a lot of people don't get that, or a lot of people stop after the first doctor that you think is wonkers. You go in there and you talk to somebody and that person tells you something bizarre, or like comes up with like 40 different kind of diagnoses within the first 15 minutes. I've had one of those too. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but he sat down and he says like, you have this, and I'm like, you got that for 15 minutes? I haven't even started.
You're a genius.
You're like, whoa, dude, like you need to calm down.
Right.
So looking for a doctor is a challenge, but I always say like keep going, because it's like trying to fix your car. So if you have a problem with your car, it's making a noise, and you go to the first mechanic and the mechanic says, I fixed it, you take it out and you keep driving and the noise is still there. Do you keep driving? No, you keep going you go to a different mechanic and get it fixed. And if it's not fixed, then you keep going till the problem is fixed. And so I always encourage people that if you're looking for a healthcare professional, it's not a one size fits all kind of situation. Treatment plans are not a one size fit all situation. So everything is very customized to your situation. And so keep going and be diligent and persistent so you get the help that you need. The other part of this is that we've said talking to somebody, right? Talking to somebody is not the same as talk therapy. I know you think you're going to see a therapist and you're going to talk your heart out, but it's not the same as going to your best friend and talking to your friend, or talking to your husband, or talking to your girlfriend or spouse or parent, because unless I guess they are licensed professionals, because talk therapy really is about guided communication. It's a guided therapy treatment, a way to give us tools in order for us to be able to participate in the world outside of therapy. So I learned the tools there and I practice them in my life. Whereas I'm not going to get those tools by talking to my girlfriend. But talking to a girlfriend could be your first step to getting help. So if you are suffering, there's no need to be suffering in silence. Like, talk to somebody so you can get it out and get to your first step to getting help.
Right. I think the big thing that I took from that portion, I think is probably the healthiest thing, is you needed to take ownership of this problem and be in charge of, in a way, the solution. And the other part of that being that there are all these different medical professionals out there that wanted to make these snap judgments and go down a course of action. I think, unfortunately, too many people just want to be told what to do. And I don't know how that can wind up being healthy, because
that's what I'm saying. It's very, very personal, right? This whole treatment thing is very personal. It's what you need and only you know what you need. And if you are one of those people who needs to be told what to do, then probably find a licensed professional who's going to give you that. But if you're someone like me who wants to be a part of the treatment plan, a part of the discussion, then I need to find someone who is reciprocating that way. But the important thing is to get help.
Yeah. I think where I was going with this is that I think that those doctors that are, presupposing conditions before going through the proper scientific method and evaluation, I think they're being very unfortunate. But this is just my opinion, because I've heard of the same things with other types of people going to mental health professionals. They're trying to create a lifelong patient. They're not necessarily trying to help you reach your goal and being that guide. They're trying to create a lifelong patient, I think. And I think it's very disingenuous on their part. So I feel really, not that you need my happiness for you, but I think that's really great that you were taking this nope, this is my problem. I need someone to help me figure out how I'm going to take ownership of my solution.
And that's the first step, right? Wanting to be better. Once you realize that you want to be better,
I think that's a great life skill.
Not better.
No, I think that's a great life skill, right? And that's not just in overcoming trauma. That if you want to do anything and be great in life at anything, you have to want to do it, and people can't think you do it. I mean, I think I'm fascinated, and one of the things I really like that you just said about your doctor was the first thing they did was let's go and look physically, right? Is there a chemical imbalance? All the things that can make people do things that are inconsistent with what they think their behavior is. And I think there's a huge connection between what we do physically, what we eat, what we put in our body, and how that manifests itself in our mental health and how we treat others. And what I've found over the years is even if you make substantive changes into what you eat, what you do, work out, even people that are close to you are going to question why you're making those changes, right? And if with something as personal as, because I'm sure you didn't walk around and everybody you met going, I was assaulted, right? That's not the conversation people open up with. I'm assaulted and I've got these issues. And people, all of a sudden, they see you making big changes. And I also think big changes scare people, right? Especially people close to your life, because they're like, wait a second, that person's going to change. And after they're not who I think they are, right? Because that's really what it's about. I have a facade of who I think somebody is. And after they now change or they become somebody I'm not used to, are they still going to want to be in my life? And it becomes selfish. Right? As far as doctors go and prescribing pills, I don't know whether it's the chicken or the egg anymore as to whether Americans just want to go and get a pill and be on their way and think they're solved, or we've created such a culture of as Dan said, wanting to create, chronic patients, that the first thing is let's go sedate or let's go mask everything. And I think it's amazing to me to hear that you're like, forget I want to be present, I want to be alive, and I want to grow that. I don't think that's something you just wake up and go, I'm going to do this. What was that piece of the journey about?
I think that's also so part of therapy. I talk about a lot. I'm a big advocate for professional therapy, because I think through therapy, it's not just that I don't really know what people imagine therapy is, but it is a lot of self-introspection. It's a lot of time to thinking and figuring out the way I'm seeing things and the way I'm thinking about things and why and how I can change that and what I want in life. And it's a lot of goal setting. It's a lot of mindset shift also. And so I think through that, I found a lot of promise that I can have. As I did treatment, my life became better. Little by little, my life became better. Not better in the sense of it is the way that I imagine it to be. When I say I want to do something and then I manage with the tools and suddenly I'm achieving it, I'm like, oh, I can do this. So this works. Therefore, I'm going to keep pushing. I'm going to look at the next thing, the next goal, and the next goal, and the next goal. And here I am. I wrote a whole manuscript, right? And that's not an easy feat. Right. I think I sat down and I completed a whole manuscript, and that was something that I had never imagined. But that mindset shift is a step at a time, one thing at a time, and every little victory really matters. And some of those victories becomes what is my life. and becomes this picture of the life that I've imagined for myself. And I'm in charge of it, and I am present, and I am the lead actor in my life. And that's the most important part of it. Whereas before I was just kind of trying to get by,
right,
just trying to survive each day and just kind of go with the flow kind of thing. And it was not leading anywhere. It was just getting through another day.
right.
But now I can look forward to things because now I know I can.
Was there a particular moment where you had that realization that, hey, I've shifted?
I always look back at my children. I think when I first had my daughter, so my first daughter taught me. I have two, and I hate to say this because it sounds like as if I didn't learn anything from the second, but I did. On different matters, I learned a lot of things. But having your first child is like no other, right? You don't know what the hell you're doing. You have this kid in your arms. There's no manual. You're supposed to keep it alive. You're supposed to make sure it's thriving. And then I get hit with my kid. My first child is profoundly gifted. So her IQ is off the charts, which meant she needed a lot of different things, and her behaviors were different, were not typical of other children. And that posed a challenge to me. And then I had to get in there, and I had to get all the things that she needed. And I didn't even think twice. I'm doing this, right? I didn't second guess myself as I would if it was something for myself. I didn't worry about how I was going to do it. I just did it because my kid needed these things. I'm going to make sure that she has all these things because she needs to thrive. She needs to be the best that she can be. She needs to be comfortable, and she needs to have all the things she needs. And I went in there and I did it. And today she's in a situation where she's thriving at school. And I look back and I think oh, wow, I did that. I was able to do all those things. She has an environmental campaign. She's 6 years old, and she has an environmental campaign, and she's done a lot of things within our community, and I did that with her. Right. So parenting my child gave me that kind of view, whoa, I'm capable of these things. But my motivation was what was lacking. What my motivation, there was no question I would do anything for my child. But at the same time, if I put that same thought to myself and I would do anything for myself, I could live the life that I wanted. I can have that for myself too. And so I feel having a child really changed my perspective around my successes in life.
Isn't it interesting how our we're supposed to be the role models for our children, but in a lot of ways they're inspiring us to be better. I had one of my early guests on the show and a former coworker of mine. His name's Shane. He had something similar in that case where he didn't have his degree, and here it is, his daughter who worked all the way through college, basically paying for herself, and now she was getting ready to graduate law school at Elon, and he's like, I should do this too. And so he went back and he got his undergrad, which he just completed last year, but it was because of, he's like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be the role model, and now I'm being inspired by my child to go be better. I think that's interesting because I feel like I want to be better all the time for my children as well. But it's interesting to have that, at least that epiphany that your child's what.
Absolutely. She was 3 when she wanted to be an activist, and she has she's given speech. She's 6 years old, but since she was 4, she's given speeches at universities, and she's about to meet the city council to get a ban on plastic straws in our city. And she has been invited to do those things. And that's just inspiring for me to think that she is doing all those things, and therefore I should not be afraid to tell my story. I should be brave too. I should be brave. She's standing there up to all these old men and telling them what they need to do with our city.
Were they older than TK?
Nobody is. Nobody is, Dan.
Nobody is.
I can't feed you straight lines all day. Come on, man.
But our children inspire us. Our children inspire. That I felt was a big shift. There are many turning points in my life. You asked me about a turning point when I had a mindset shift. First was when I first met my husband. When I was dating him, and he kind of supported me through a lot. And there was a mindset shift there when I felt like I was in love, and I wanted it to work out, and I wanted more for my life. For once, I wanted to be loved by somebody, and so I was willing to do the work for me to be present so that I can experience this life with him. Then I had kids, and then this taught me a different experience, and I'm growing even more. And now I have this book, and I'm sure I'll grow even more from this experience. Like, I'm putting myself out there. This is a different kind of experience, but I think little things in life and the little victories and the little things, that events in our life push us forward, propel us forward towards something bigger. And I keep growing and growing and growing.
When you first came to the realization that you needed help, and you went out and you took ownership of it, and I'm not talking about your family, but other friends and people, did you start to see a change in other people, and was it always positive?
I think when I did that, I was in a very different space. It was a very internal battle. So I kind of kept to myself a little while. I pulled away because a lot of the self-destructive behavior was social behaviors. So I kind of pulled away from all of that to kind of find solace in growing by myself and healing by myself. Right. But once I came out of that, I do see a difference in the way people respond to me and the way that I interact with the world around me was very different, because the way I saw things was different already. I wasn't projecting my negativity or projecting my pain onto the interactions, and so they were more open, and I was more honest. That whole treatment process forced me to be honest, because there's no treatment if you cannot be honest with yourself and honest with the therapist. Then you're just sitting there and you're BSing your way, and that's not doing anything. So I had to learn to be honest, and being honest with myself helped me see things clearer and helped me open up. And I was more open with my interactions. I was more honest and genuine and sincere, that I think that my relationships were different after that.
Do you think you were able to determine who were your real friends at that point?
So till this day, I have taken a stance of I don't care. I mean, you have to there's no way you're going to know the truth about what anybody feels at any point in time. Even if you believe that it is what you make of it, right?
Sure.
If you believe that person is somebody you trust, somebody you love, somebody you care, then that's how you proceed with the relationship. But in true honesty, you can never know what another person is thinking. You can never know the entirety of how somebody else feels or thinks about you. And so I feel I've taken the stance of what anybody else thinks is none of my business. Whatever they think behind, whatever they don't say to me is none of my business. So I take things at face value, and I try to I am open and trusting until I guess you have evidence that says otherwise.
Very interesting. So you decided to write this book. Have you already written the book?
I have written a full manuscript. I'm in the middle of editing it right now.
Are you editing it, or did you hire an editor?
I'm working with an editor.
Oh, good. Nice. And already, are you choosing to do a self-publication through Amazon, or are you working with a publisher?
We haven't gotten to that yet. I wanted to do it one step at a time, and I'll edit the book first and see where we go. And then, yeah. You're making me make all these statements. Making me make all these public statements. Well, this is when the book will be out, and this is where it will be.
I didn't ask you as to when the date will be yet, but
not ready yet.
Hey, I tend to push. I push. All right, we got to get it out there. Let's go. I definitely, once I've for myself, once I have already gotten through, okay, I know what I'm going to do, and I'll talk about with with the missus when we decided to do the distillery and stuff. And she's like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Well, poof, gone. She's like, whoa, hold on. Hey, you said green light. Let's go.
But you're right. But we talked about accountability earlier, right? So yeah. I am at a point where there's no turning back now. So good. At least there's that accountability. And I'm telling you guys that there's going to be a book out at some point.
Nice. So, you've decided to write this book, and, I've read quite a bit of your blogs, and I was telling you this in the pre-show, because I feel like I still do myself, and suffering from imposter syndrome. A lot like the writing about with you and your daughter's teacher, and then you start wondering, oh my gosh, are all these people judging me? And how do you cope with that imposter syndrome? Maybe not that I'm not that kind of a doctor. I do work on more viruses than what most doctors work on, but different kind. But I kind of look at, do you feel like you suffer from imposter syndrome?
I do. And I just read this book yesterday, and they were talking, it's a book for writers and pep talks for writers. And so it talked about imposter syndrome and how you will always, this is the sickness of comparing yourself to others. And even people who are successful are not free from imposter syndrome, because we have this perfectionist idea that like things have to be, I have to be an MFA, or I have to be a published writer, or I have to be I have to have published a series of books or 10 series of books or whatever to feel like a writer. But even Maya Angelou said that after she had written 11 titles, she said that she doesn't feel that she's a bona fide writer. So I think this is a common trait for artists or people who are creative, to feel that like they are never good enough. And sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and how I deal with it, I guess I feel it, and this is part of acceptance commitment therapy, where I feel it and I experience it. This is how I feel right now. I don't feel good enough. However, I don't have the facts. Feelings are feelings, and feelings are not the facts. I don't have facts. That the facts are that I am a writer. I write in a blog. I'm writing a book, so therefore I am a writer. What is the definition of a writer? So then I process that and I kind of let it go until it comes back again.
Do you think, excuse me, and I think with anything where you have to put yourself out there in the public eye, right? It's depending on whether people think they're introverts or extroverts, or pushing through their own insecurities to say, I'm going to do something that the public can critique. Do you think, we talk about imposter syndrome, but I think the other half of this discussion is, like, because somebody said to me before, hey, you should write a book. I'm like, I don't think I've done anything that's interesting enough where people want to read it, right? Like, and is that
TK, not everyone's lived 200 years. That's novel.
It's 187. Get it right. Is that a legitimate standalone? Like we say, he or she has imposter syndrome. Is the fact where you just don't think what you do is important enough to be in the public eye? That is that an excuse, or is that a standalone thing, just like imposter syndrome? And I go back and forth on whether I believe one or the other.
I think that's insecurities, and I think everybody has insecurities. And as a writer or a creator, somebody who is, whether you're putting it out there or not, even if you're showing your stuff to, like, I wrote my draft and then I had like 5 friends read it, and even then I have that thought like, oh my goodness, they're gonna think it's rubbish, or they're like, do I actually have a story that's worth to tell, or am I just like self-indulgent and writing this thing as a book, as if like I have something important to say? And like you said, I think it's just a common phenomenon for people who are creative. Like whatever it is that you do, if you write a song and you're afraid to like let people hear it because you're not sure if is this really a song, or has this been written before, or
Old McDonald's already been done and they don't want the remake. Right?
Exactly. or like, is this book profound enough to be a book? Is my memoir, who cares about my story? I mean, I think those are normal. I think they're valid insecurities, but however, like I don't sit in them. I try not to. I try to get past it. I try to process it and say like, okay, like, there's no way of telling. The only way through is through. I'll just have to get through it.
How do you view the book as a tool? Right? Is it a tool of healing for you? Is it a tool to help other people? Is it a message, a message to others that say, hey, look, this hasn't happened to you, but if something like this happens to you, here's my thoughts on how to deal with it. How do you look at it, and how has it helped you grow, and what was kind of the cathartic process of that along the way? And has that been a big part of your healing?
All of the above, yes. I started it only because I wanted to write a story for my children, so that when they were older, I said I want them to see what I've been through and what I've been able to overcome, and I want them to know the strength that I had, for them to have the same strength. And then it became, I wanted to share it with everybody else. I wanted people to know the realities of people who go through the things that I have and what it took to overcome those things, and so that people who have experienced it don't feel alone, and for people who are standing by, and like we said earlier, those people who are standing by can be allies and better allies and advocates, and that we can create a world that is different for our children, that hopefully by the time my children are older, that we are kinder to each other. Our society has a new social script for trauma, a new social script for mental illness, that my children can go and get help whenever they need help. And my children, your children, all our children, I hope that's the hope with the book. But while writing it, definitely there was a lot of healing, a lot of retrospective introspection, going through. I had to relive all the things that I'm writing about, and I had to reprocess it. What was it that I was feeling at the time, and like, how would I have been different? And I'm trying to put that in the book too. How would I have wished that things would have been different, so that people can see what it was that I could have used help with, and so that they know how they can help other people. And it has made me grow in a lot, understanding my strength and ability. I'm reading these things, and is this like, I'm trying to use a PG word. Okay.
You're reading them almost like it's the third person. Like you're like, who is this person?
I'm reading this thing and I'm going, no, like, why did you do that? Like, oh my goodness, like I did that. Like, this is terrible. And then I kept reading the whole thing, and it's really messed up. And I said, this whole thing is so messed up, all my self-destructive behavior. But then I'm thinking about the pain and the hurt that caused all those things. And then I'm delving even deeper than I ever looked into these things before. And so I feel like I am growing and learning how far I've come from where I was.
What do you think, or actually what would you say are the most self-destructive behaviors that you had to overcome?
That's a tough question you're asking me here. Well, I had suicidal ideation. I guess that's the worst one. That would be the worst.
Okay.
I had suicidal ideation and suicidal attempts. Thankfully, they were only attempts. So I am here to tell the story. They were interrupted, and I think those were the worst things that anybody could have ever done, because now I live a life where I could not have imagined back then.
Right.
And I'm living it now, and I am thankful for those attempts being interrupted, that I get to live this life now, that I couldn't imagine was ever possible 20 years ago.
So did you think it was going to be that challenging to write your memoir?
No.
I would have imagined the answer would have been no, but because for me, knowing having to relive that, I would think would be
writing it was not a challenge. Editing it is. Because when you go into the edits is when you really have to think back. My editor's asking like, so what was your point of view at this time? What were you trying to do? What were you trying to say? And what can we say about this? And then like I'm forcing myself to look from the outside now.
You have to put those clothes back on again, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So that part is, I think, incites more pain and healing. But writing it was quite easy.
I could see that because when you're having to edit it, now you're having to critique every single thing that you did. In this case, yes. I would imagine you were probably even more critical of yourself than maybe what you had gone through during that time of healing and working with your medical professionals at that time.
Of course, because now I have something important to say, and I want to make sure I say it right, and I want to make sure that I make the most impact as possible when I'm writing this, that people read this, get it, and there's more responsibility, right? Then it was me healing was just me trying to process my feelings and my thoughts and process the way I live my life, which is very internal, invisible, and personal to myself. But writing a book is kind of sharing that with others and making sure that I am being tactful and I'm being accurate with my accounts and accurate with what I want to portray.
Yeah. So, now you're probably still healing at some point. I'm sure that never, the wounds probably never completely heal, but you just, you now have tools that are able to help you not dwell on that pain for as long. So you're now in this, what I say, thriving aspect. What things did you do to get to this point? Now you've gone through from the aspect of victim to healing, as a survivor. Now you're kind of beyond that. What things did you do in order to get to where you are, like that next step from where you're at now?
So there's two parts to this. Like, I have bipolar disorder that's not going away. That's something I have to deal with on a daily basis. And from what I understand, it's going to be forever. It's not something that's treatable and curable. I mean, it's treatable, it's not curable. So I manage my life with my drug therapy and my professional help, my talk therapy. That's one part of it, to keep my highs and lows closer to baseline. But I also do a lot of things to maintain the environment around my life, to make sure that I can stay as close to baseline as possible, as in like a healthy relationship in my marriage, a healthy relationship with my children. I'm making sure that I'm setting boundaries as to how much I commit outside of my personal life, because excess stress brings triggers on my episodes. So I have to be healthy with my boundaries, and I learned how to say no. That was a very difficult thing to learn, especially when you have kids in school. Everyone's like, oh, can you help with this? And can you help with that? And will you do this? And will you do that? And I want to say yes, yes, yes to everything. But I learn now that I cannot. I know my limitations and I cannot say yes to everything. And so I say no whenever I can. I have to say no, and I take it. I forget about, like, talking about like other people's perspective or reactions to myself. I have to just, like, if they're not saying it to me, then it's none of my business. But I have to take care and protect my health and my personal environment. We also do a lot of things like healthy eating, exercise. I manage meditation, and we go on hikes a lot. I like to meditate on hikes. So we do a lot of that, connecting with nature. I believe in being part of this vast universe and being one small piece of it, like a grain of sand or a droplet of water that has its purpose. Somehow I have my purpose, and that's why I'm here. And that I remind myself of that constantly. And that's what keeps me going, keeps me alive, knowing that I have a purpose. And I'm okay with not knowing what exactly that purpose is. I don't know if that purpose is writing this book or being a mother or being a wife or whatever it is, but I'm at peace knowing that I have a purpose. I must have a purpose, and I'm okay with that. And that keeps me going. And I think that helps me stay in this stage of growth and healing.
Yeah, I can imagine so. I think there's another life skill in there that many of us should take away from that, which is how to say no. Like we I think as Americans, they're already overworked and stressed out because we work more than any other country, but that's because we don't say no. Like we push the boundaries, and we allow other people to put their will upon us, and rather than going, hey, look, nope, this is all I can take, and I'm not going any further.
This is our stance in life, right? Like we want more, that we never know how to like step back and like take a step back and relax. Americans work so much that they don't understand I read this in a book. I think it was Eat, Pray, Love, but that really resonated with me. She says something like how Americans work so much, or like busy ourselves so much with our phone and the news and TV and doing things, just constantly doing things, that we don't know how to just sit back and siesta. like the Europeans do. In Italy, they go like in the afternoon, everyone's just siesta, they're taking a rest, taking a nap. And that's not something that we do because it's our culture to go, 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 go. Like even if you are taking a nap, you're looking at your phone, scrolling through social media or scrolling through the news or doing something. We constantly need to do something. And I think that we should take a page out of the books, like to relax a little bit and be able to have limits and say no to things.
You have to learn how to inhale, as they say.
Yeah.
Nice. So, Amelia, what kind of things what kind of advice, what are the first steps? You said talk to a friend, talk to someone, but what are some other things that some people might do that might help them get to a point of talking to a medical professional?
So I'm not in a place to give advice. I hate whenever people ask me this. I don't like giving advice because I'm not a professional and I don't want to be held like, people think that I'm giving professional advice. But I can share experiences is kind of, if you want to get ready to talk to somebody, it's to be able to accept that what's going on is not healthy and not normal. Normal is such a terrible word. Because what's normal? I'd say what's healthy? What's healthy for you? And if things don't feel right, then get it checked out. Because if you had a heart murmur, would you sit with that? If you had heart palpitations,
a lot of people do, right? A lot of people do, right? I mean, and I think whether you talk about that or emotional trauma, and how when things don't feel right, I think people are like, well, I don't know I know where I'm at right now, and it's not perfect. But I have no idea, and it's the fear of the unknown. Like if I go to the doctor,
I might find out something terrible.
Right? What are they actually going to find out? Right?
Yeah.
And that comes into people going, I may be effed up, but I'm not as effed up as that guy, right? And they start imposing their thing. I don't want to be over in that group when they have, and I think it's that fear of the unknown that stops people.
Exactly.
More than
yeah.
I mean, like I said, that's my opinion.
I believe that. I think that's a lot to do with why people don't get help, because they think like, I'm not that bad. That's where I was. I'm like, I'm not crazy. What are you talking about? Bipolar? I'm not crazy. I'm not a serial killer. Only those kind of people have bipolar, not me. So, but to be able to see that and to be able to think that there is a life that is possible where you are not suffering, just a want for a life where you're not suffering, because having this mental torment, anguish in your brain all the time, like that's no way to live. I don't feel like that's something that's going to be fulfilling, or
I call that the Medal of Honor syndrome. Right? If you ever read, the Medal of Honor, winners, one of the things, if you ever read most of the stories, with very few exceptions, what they all break down to is they're in a situation where they're being shot at, things are going on. No matter what they do, if they do nothing, then they're most likely going to die. If they do something, they're most likely going to die. But they have to do something to have any chance to survive. And I think when people finally get to that point where they're like, I might have a bad outcome. If I do nothing, I'm having a bad outcome right now. Right? So if I'm doing nothing, I'm having a bad outcome. I have to do something. It might be a bad outcome, but what's the art of the possible, right? And what if everything goes right? What can I be? And I think if people change that mindset, right? And we talk about this in investing, right? Angel investors and small companies, when they first started, it's like, don't think about all the things that can go wrong, because if you do, you'll never invest, right? Because most of these ideas won't come to fruition. But if you look at angel investing, for example, and go, if everything possible goes right, how can this change the world? How can this change people? How can this make people better? And I think, like I said, I've always quantified it as what I call the Medal of Honor syndrome, that when you finally get to a point where you're like, I know it's not right, and I know if I don't do anything, it's never going to be right. And this is big and scary over there, but there's got to be something over there that's got a nugget of help there, and I'm willing to move, because this is never going to change me.
Absolutely. To be able to just have that thought of like a possibility, a tiny possibility that things can be different and things can be better than what you're already having. So
hope.
Yeah, hope. Exactly. And that's what I hope that people get out of like our talk today, out of my book, or that people who are in pain have this inkling of hope that things can be different and things can be better only if they put themselves out there and try. It's hard, it's difficult. So a lot of like the steps I posted this once, the steps to like find a provider, speak to your primary care provider to start if you don't know where to start, then they'll make a referral for you, and then go with a friend or a relative, because one is scary. It's very scary to go into these appointments, to be able to like go there and tell them exactly what you're feeling. At least someone with you can help you tell that story or explain the symptoms and help remind you of the things that you cannot remember. And it can be very overwhelming seeing a healthcare provider for the first time. So it's nice to have somebody with you, a support system. And I think from there, you'll find care and hopefully find what you need in life.
Very nice. So, Amelia, I know everyone can connect with you at your website, ameliazachry.com. But what other ways can some people connect with you?
I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Brown Girl Crazy World.
Brown Girl Crazy World.
I like it.
Nice.
And you thought Nostradamus was cool, didn't you? Get in the back seat there. You've been disposed. You're out. I
got the better one.
Yeah. A new favorite social media handle now. That's awesome.
But yeah, follow me on my website. If you subscribe to my website, I have updates on the book, and hopefully that will be out soon. And I'm very excited about that.
Perfect. So, Amelia, what kind of parting words can you give for those tuning in today?
For those who are suffering from mental illness or trying to process trauma, there is hope. Hold on. It's one day at a time, and you'll get there as long as you hold on and keep holding on to that hope of things getting better for a life that you have imagined for yourself, not anyone else. And those who know someone who's suffering from mental illness or trauma, I hope that you find it in you to be a better ally and advocate by leaving your judgments at the door and loving unconditionally and providing love and care while being present with the person and giving them what they need and not what you think they need, because that can be very different, and just being there for those people who need you.
Very nice. So, Amelia, I gave you a hint about one of the things we always ask all of our guests that come on, which is, what's next for Amelia? What goal can we help you be accountable for? So when hopefully you'll come back on and give us some updates and even talk about some things your daughter may be doing. So the people would love to be able to know about that, I'm sure. But what kind of goal can we hold you accountable for?
Well, right now it's my memoir, my manuscript. I want that to be something, and hopefully I'll keep at it. Like, I won't take a break and keep at it, and hopefully we'll see it by the end of this year or early next year. I
think the end of this year would be as much better than next year.
What a great Christmas gift.
Yeah, this would be.
I would truly love that. I would truly love that, but I don't know the publishing system. That's once it's out of my hands, I guess that's where it's.
You don't know it yet. You're about ready to find out.
So will you make a prediction and make sure it comes through Nostradamus?
Hey, I think that's why I said I think you need to make sure it happens this year. I just, I feel like better things happen if you're doing it this year than next.
All right.
But don't let my desires influence how you should react. I mean, it's got to be in your timeline. But that goal is, I'd like to have a nice fine, detailed line. This is when this is going to be done. So when it doesn't, TK and I can call you up and be like, hey, Amelia, you said this is going to be done by the end of the year. It's January. Where's it at?
Then she's going to go, I didn't say what year.
Yeah.
Amelia, I want to say this before we go. I always tell people, especially when we're coaching up executives and things like that, that in order to help other people, you have to help yourself first. And kind of the thing that we talk about is when you get on an airplane, they always say, hey, if the oxygen mask drops down, you got to put yours on before you help other people. And because if not, you become useless to everybody else. I think you firmly have your oxygen mask on your face right now. And this was a great hour.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I am honored, and I am really thankful, grateful that you guys have held space for me today to speak about something that's so important and close to my heart. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Please feel free to come back anytime. We'd love to hear more.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's anything that we can do for you in the future, Amelia, feel free to reach out. You've got TK's his Instagram is probably the worst out of all of us, because it's just TK_Eppley. I mean,
yeah, I know.
We should put old guy TK _Eppley.
187 TK 187.
Do we really have to do that? Is that necessary? That's redundant.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, Amelia, thank you so much again. TK, my friend, always good. Hope you all both have a great week. I hope everyone out there listening now or watching later, you all have a great week. And, if you have an opportunity to seek help, if you think you're not living a healthy, that's the best thing to do is go talk to someone if you don't feel like you're being healthy. So hopefully everyone took some good stuff away from this. And again, I really appreciate you coming on, Amelia.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks,
everyone. Take care.
Bye.